everyone, my name is Laniyuk. I'm a Larrakia, Kungarakan, Gurindji and French writer and performer of poetry, short memoir and more recently speculative fiction. I am currently living on the sacred and unceded lands of the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people in Melbourne. And today I'll be sharing 4 poems with you from different publications published over the past couple of years. Starting with a poem that's quite special to me and to my family. It was published in a book titled Firefront, edited by the spectacular Alison Whittaker. And I often reflect on this publication because Alison did such a beautiful job of holding space and protecting the writers in that book. She put a lot of effort in supporting us, and that effort looked like space. And I think really supporting us in whatever capacity we needed as Aboriginal people to bring those publications forward. So for me, that meant holding off the deadline so that I could return home to Darwin and read the poem to my nana and get her thoughts and her approval before I published a poem that mentioned her grandmother. So this poem is titled Remember. Baranguru of the Eora. Damn, she was the essence of resistance. Second wife to Benelong, she bore more than children. She was proud, headstrong, calculated and persistent. She did not fall for the illusion of white ascendance. She defied it, fought it, cut throat, tore at it, conspired with the ancestors and reminded the children, beware the sweet poison in white man's hand. Remember your people. Take care of your lands. She ripped and tugged at European dresses, refused red wine, and demanded resistance. Dragonini of the Palawa possessed the intelligence of subtle defiance, having witnessed the ways of white man's violence, death, destruction, and disease, lynching, raping, murdering. She knew the tactics of war are not always with spears, and attempted to compromise to the colonial ears. Her negotiations were met with lies and deceit. Her people were dying by foreign disease. She took to the bush with a gun in hand and became an outlaw to the white man. Carried her spirit to the Kulin nations and fought for her people's emancipation. My great Kungarakan Wechi, Alien Double, embodied resilience. A paperbark woman, lean and pensive. Her family and tribe were killed by rat poison. When her husband died, the state took her children. She worked for white families, and when the chores were done, she walked to the townships with scraps for her sons. I can see her hand holding theirs over walls and through fences, telling them stories about people's creation. Now there's apartments from ocean to high ground attempting to disguise the Carlin compound. When the colony decides that the story is his, the contributions of our women become whitewashed myths. I imagine the nights our women lay awake, searching the stars, and now I'm out here doing the same. When I look to the skies, I'm holding their gaze. When I breathe in the gum, I can carry their names. I can hear them singing on the arrival of rain. Their strength emblazoned in my DNA. The next poem that I'll be reading to you is from an incredible and vast collection of work called Solid Air, which has amazing poetry from poets from here and from Aotearoa, and it's a really beautiful collaboration of work. When one of the editors, Annie, approached me, who I met at the Queensland Poetry Festival a few years ago, they approached me for a different poem. And it took me a while to get back to them because I was sort of sitting there thinking about it, and I thought, that's not the poem that I want. This will be my first poem published in a collection of international literature, and it's not the poem that I want the world to be reading. That's not the story that I want to be prioritizing for an international audience. And so instead I published this poem called Finger on the Map. Finger on the Map. This is mine now. Flag on the hill, it's the Union Jack invading the red, the yellow, and the black. That attempt on genocide, it never did subside. They're busy, filling the minds of black and white with lies. Hey, you mob, let's recognize. Fuck that shit, let's decolonize. Let's reprogram our minds and realize that we're all still slaves. Slaves to a system that took the children away, raped the women as their men lay in pools of blood. But oh no, wait, hold up. Slaves to a system that takes our children away, rapes our women as our men sway by ropes. A powerful people, but we weren't ready. Ready for a king that lacked integrity, ready for sickness and guns and big cities, ready to battle a man that didn't fight hand to hand, but with poison and bullets and prisons. Fuck this system. Imperialism came by boat, then infiltrated our minds, arrived with the Bible, a forked tongue, and a bottle of wine. There's no need to kill us when you're keeping us institutionalized. Now they're turning our suffering into dollar signs, turning our forests and our desert into uranium mines. Meanwhile, we're lowering our elders into early graves, leaning in to kiss the soft grays of their heads, only to turn around and bury our cousins next. Tonight we stand on unrelinquished land, knowing every single day that sovereignty was never ceded and resistance never fucking ended. You can see why I wanted that to be on an international platform. The next poem that I have for you is from a journal of nonfiction poetry called Rabbit, this excellent pink cover. And I was fortunate enough to be accepted into a series of political poetry workshops specifically for Aboriginal poets, run by the amazing Janine Lean. And it's always special when there are spaces made for and by Aboriginal people to do the work and have the conversations and create the art that we want to see in the world. So over a series of workshops, we wrote poems, learned about different forms of poetry, and I wrote a particular poem that had been sitting with me for a while, and I rang my cousin back home in Darwin, and I read it to her, and she was like, you know, good poem, but I think you're confused actually, because that's not a story that for us. I know what story you're talking about. I've heard that story, but what you're talking about isn't one of our stories. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to be publishing a story that doesn't belong to us. What do you think I should publish? What do you think I should write? And she said, I think you should write about how there's a Larrakia gravesite under Darwin Casino. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And I think it's important to return to our communities every now and again and say, what do you want me to use my skills for? What would be beneficial? So here's my poem, and I'm quite fond of this poem for a lot of reasons. And it's called Underneath Darwin Casino Lies a Larrakia Burial Ground. Lights flicker through perfectly placed landscape palms. Auntie says with a gentle nod, that's where our ancestors are, where they were once able to rest. Right there, she says, pointing to looming concrete and fenced-off crowds of affluence and leisure mixed with the silent desperation of gambled life savings. My kin and their spirits are now intermingled with the empire's greatest skill. The theft of wealth disguised as prosperity, our sovereign death right, a reaching embrace between generations denied by the colony. Hey, Bob. Every time I drive past, I think of our mob resting there in our country. Every time. Both of my grandmothers, my mum's mum and my dad's mum, are poets and poetry lovers. And I didn't really make that connection until recently, in the past couple of years. And it almost feels like there is nothing else I could have been but a poet. To have that form of passion and creativity in my blood. And I think for me it's a real honor and a blessing to be able to use that creativity to share moments and stories of my life, and the moments and stories that I hear. And I remember that moment so vividly, driving in the car with my auntie and her telling me about Darwin Casino. I can still see the darkness of the street and the palm trees, and I feel very fortunate to be able to capture that moment and to be able to share it with other people. So thank you for listening. The final poem that I'll be reading to you is from a collection of work called Not Quite Right for Us, edited by a woman that I met so very briefly called Sharmila a couple of years ago now, and we stayed in contact, and she asked me to contribute something to this collection, and again, she, as an editor, she held that role so graciously, and her communication was incredible, and her patience goes a long way, and so I feel very fondly of this connection, for this collection and the connection that I have with Sharmila. And the Speaking Volumes, who published this collection, is based in the UK, based in England, and it's not sort of lost on me the power of having an Aboriginal poem published in the heart of the British Empire. And I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about this poem sitting in bookshelves in London. It's a weird time. But again, another one of my favorite poems. Look, I love all my poems. I don't know. I have a strong connection and love for poems, poetry, and stories. This poem is called 97% Cotton. It looks beautiful, gawks the sales assistant. I slide my lips into a routine and well-performed smile. Thank you, I mirror back with fake enthusiasm. Holding the loose pleats of the knee-high dress, I gently twist from side to side, mesmerized by its soft cotton sway. It's a delicate summer dress of bright floral print, and I look cute as shit. I know it. She knows it. The whole fucking store can see I look amazing. I slide back into the stall, lock the door behind me, and hold my gaze in the reflection of a softly lit mirror, shadows falling down my face. The cut of the fabric slides down my chest, hugs my hips, and gently cascades down my thighs. I am mesmerized by me. You could be this kind of girl, I think to myself. You could be a child of summer and sun and flowers and sweetness. You could ride bikes and have picnics, be delicate on a Sunday and badass on a Monday. You can be both. But in this small chamber, cocooned in this retail conglomerate, I am haunted by ghosts. Echoes of knobbly brown knees, restrained in crisp European dresses, young prisoners to British colonialism's Christianity. I cannot unsee the mission in me. These gushing pleats bleed the tears of the parents whose children were ripped from their arms, scratching and prying at the hands of priests. I cannot unsee the mission in me. As a child, I was quiet and gentle, poised and wide-eyed to my surroundings. I think young me would have loved this dress. But these qualities are not conducive to surviving ongoing invasion. These are not the traits that erected this strong spine, that carved these sharp eyes, that grew this articulate mind. The colony made my softness meek. And in this moment, I wonder who I might have been. I look into the hardened face of someone I know and yet have never met. A survivor and a resistor. A child never allowed to bloom. And I think once I knew you. Standing amongst the faded faces of our stolen children, corners singed from disregard, I unzip. Their eyes watch as I remove soft cotton and fold away the tenderness stolen from us. I return the fabric to the arms of the shop assistant and politely shrug. Not for you, she over-empathizes. No, I mirror. Not quite. Thank you so much for sitting with me and hearing my poetry across these incredible collections of work. Solid Air, Rabbit's Journal of Nonfiction Poetry, Not Quite Right for us, as well as Firefront, the incredible collection edited by Alison Whitaker. I hope you enjoyed my poetry.